Hello, everyone, and welcome to the summer celebration. Welcome to the summer celebration. Hello, Graham. I see you just signed in, and Susanna. I'm so glad you could join us.
Hola.
And
Can you hear
hello,
me?
Logan.
Good? You can hear me?
Good to see everyone. And I'll just say I've got some notes, and I'm sorry if it looks like I'm reading, but I do want to make sure that I touch on a number of ideas. And I also want to be really respectful of our time. We will finish within an hour. And so to make sure that happens, I've got the notes, because when I speak extemporaneously, as is already happening, right, the time is going on. So, okay. The pandemic has called upon all of us to be adaptable and resilient over these many months, but at this point, the height of the summer, it finally seems that we can look on the bright side. The Center for Sound Communities has so much to celebrate, and we've invited you here today to share all kinds of news. If only we could pop a few champagne corks and pass around some finger food. As we begin this program, I gratefully acknowledge that the center is located in Unama'ki, which is in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral territory of our neighbors, the Mi'kmaq people, some of whom are joining us today as students and research affiliates. Now, I'd like to introduce Dr. Sheila Christie, who has been the CSC's Associate Director for the past 3 years, our first Associate Director. Sheila has exerted truly magnanimous efforts in support of faculty and student researchers and community researchers, and I would like to thank her for her thoughtful, dedicated service to the CSC, to CBU, and to our wider communities. In Sheila, I have found a like-minded colleague, a performance person who is open and enthusiastic, a creative academic partner who operates on the basis of scholarship, and a teaching practice of care. Sheila, thank you for your many contributions to the CSC.
Thank you, Sheila.
More than words can convey, thank you. I'm grateful to you for your commitment and your drive and your extraordinary, impressive ability to get things done. As of July 1st, Sheila has taken on a new role as the chair of the Department of Literature, Folklore, and the Arts, or LIFTA, as we affectionately call ourselves. And all of us at the Center for Sound Communities wish her well, though she's not really going far. I've given her as a bit of a gift a blueberry bush that actually has 3 kinds of blueberries grafted on it, right? So it's like Sheila and Shauna and I, we're all together still and growing together. Who knows what fruits will come of it, right? So all of us at the CSC wish you well, Sheila, just down the hall. Congratulations on your new appointment. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Marcia. I can tell you that I have already begun enjoying those blueberries. So I will think of you both every time I find new ripe ones. Yeah, I mean, this is the Center for Sound Communities has been a phenomenal experience, and getting to work with Marcia has equally been incredibly important to the work that I do. But just also, I want to acknowledge here that we've got Graham, of course, and Chantel, both of whom are on our advisory board, and they are a good part of why it has been such a great experience, because it's helped me to move past my own small communities and figure out ways to connect with others. Now, my shortcut when I know that I don't have a lot of time is to go by PowerPoint and show pictures, because pictures are fun. So, one moment. I'm going to start with a confession that when I met Marcia, I was a medievalist. And I'm not anymore, and it's entirely her fault. Well, not entirely, but I was trained as a medieval drama scholar, and as you can see, performance is certainly a part of that. But all along with medieval drama, my goal was to figure out, why did people do these productions that lasted for sometimes decades, centuries, hundreds of years, where they would do them annually or semi-annually, and they cost huge amounts of money, and they were being put on by everyday people, people whose jobs were carpentry or glassmaking or, mercers. Now, I'm not going to bore you all with, the price of wax or the rent of a rose, but rather to say that one of the things that the CSC has done has helped me to do what I was already looking for, an opportunity to take those lessons from the past and move them into the present, in service of Canadian society, and as I've later learned, of Mi'kmaq society and of our Indigenous hosts here on Onunimagi. So Marcia has already given a brief land acknowledgement. I'm very proud now that I can say that we are on the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqiyik people, which is something I learned from our advisory board. So it's been a great help to me. Sorry, Graham's not in the advisory board at the moment, but is a critical component of the work we do. It's Clifford who's on the advisory board. So many great people. So my work with the CSC, oh no. There we go. Oh, it's looking for my mouse, that's why. 1 second. My work with the CSC began before the physical building actually existed. And it was a project that Marcia and I worked together on with a number of other people, including some of our colleagues from the sciences, Martin McCandaware and Ken Oakes. And it was a pilot project to see how we could do multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary work between the arts and the sciences. We were looking particularly at slow violence and at the ways in which environmental degradation has a negative impact on communities. And we wanted as much as possible to be really working with and engaging youth. And so in this project, I got to learn so many things. I got to learn, how do you do something that involves a number of people from different areas? How do you bring in RAs to a project? What are the best ways to make sure that RAs are having a worthwhile experience? And it gave me an opportunity to engage through arts with other people. So here, these are sorry, these are photos from the capacity building weekend, our opening symposium. And this project really introduced me to things that Marcia sees as very important and have become part of my own process. So acknowledging different phases, starting off with helping everyone get up to speed. What are the sorts of things that people need to know? What are the conversations that we're going to be having throughout the whole project? And so we had an opportunity to work with the youth to introduce them to some of the academic conversations and vice versa. And then throughout the project, we had people working on audiovisual documentary work. We had people creating theater. We had people recording music. There was photography. There was visual art. There was all sorts of different artistic processes. And so looking at this kind of multimodal perspective, how can you approach a challenge from a number of different directions at once and bring as many voices in as possible? One of the goals of this particular project was intergenerational exchange. We wanted to get younger kids together with older people from the communities. And so this was a really great way to start looking at how can we build networks. Now, when that part of the project was done, we wanted to continue to explore mentorship and youth engagement. And we did that in a couple of ways, including 2 film projects. Now, the Dominion project was it was a documentary about coal and the impact of coal power in our community, and particularly in Dominion. And we brought in an expert documentarian to lead a group of youth through that process. And then the other one that we did was the Bigsby project, where I was approached by a student with a proposal, and we funded it and we mentored them and supported them, but they led the project. And that was an incredibly important element that came out of this CSC oriented project. In fact, some of the people in the Bigsby project then went on to be digital interns at the CSC. So there's a real growth that happens when someone gets engaged in a project at the CSC. They come back again and again, and they learn more and more skills. And these 2 projects in particular led me to write this article, Youth as Subjects and Agents of Artistic Research, a comparison of youth engagement models, in which I talk about the fact that there's not one good model, there's not a best model, but rather it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to build skills, to build capacity, something where you're mentoring directly, I think is more appropriate. But if what you're really trying to do is give people agency and the opportunity to express their own perspectives, that second model that we did with Bigsby, where we largely were giving them funding in exchange for some things that we needed, and giving them some mentorship along the way, it created a project that was perhaps rougher, but also a very clear and authentic perspective from that group of youth that were doing the project. So one of the things that I've really learned through that project, through the way I work in the CSC, is that there are degrees to which you want to be closely engaged with the communities and even the researchers that you're working with, and sometimes you want to step back and give them space to grow and play and experiment. And we know that play is an important element of learning, an important element of growth. The next project that I took up after I came back from a sabbatical was Neighbors. And this for me was in response to the whole Trump era and the belief that if we're going to get through the challenges that we face as a society, and they're big challenges, it was going to be together. And I wanted to talk with the community about how do we build social trust, and particularly how do we build social trust over difference, right? One of the elements of the theory of social trust is that it's really easy to trust people who are exactly like you. It's much harder to trust people who are different, heterogeneous versus homogeneous trust. And universities are known as a place for fostering and cultivating heterogeneous trust, because you get people coming from all over in and learning about each other and forming bonds with each other. And I wanted to see, could we do that with theater? And so for me, the CSC became the space that was, if not a safe space, a brave space. It's a word I'm trying to adopt more, where people could come and take risks together. And this doesn't show all of the people who were involved in that opening workshop, but again, following that model that Marcia had piloted in I Create, we started with a workshop. We started with learning some skills, a vocabulary of theater that's part of applied theater, in order to decide what did the group in the room want to talk about, what was important to them. And in the end, we created this play that we performed in Lumiere, 2017. It was a forum play, which meant that we performed a play that had problems and ended in conflict. And then the audience has the chance to watch the play again and stop the action and actually step up and change it. So we did this in downtown Sydney, and we did it in the old Bank of Montreal building, which is now a local museum. And when we could not have done that without having the CSC as the space to rehearse and work in, because this is a living museum. It's a working museum. We couldn't have been there in order to do all of the development. So the CSC created that opportunity. The project also picked up on that multimodal element, and I engaged local artists to be doing window art while we were performing the play, so that window art could represent the themes of the play and remain. And in fact, it remained for a year and a half before the museum took it down and put something else in its place. Now, on the other side of the screen here, you can see this is an example of that forum moment. Here on the corner, we have somebody who's coming in to take Kate Krug's place in and play this action. And I'm here, I'm playing the Joker, which is the facilitator for this kind of performance. The other thing that I learned through this project, and again, it's connected to the CSC, was how critical it was to videotape and record everything, because you never know what's going to be important. And so I had cameras focused not only on the actors, but also on the audience. And all of these cameras came from the resources at the CSC. What ended up happening then was that I did a number of conference papers talking about the audience's responses, because I learned things looking back at those videos that I couldn't focus on in the moment of performance. All of that applied theater work that I've been doing then has led me to write a paper about research ethics and the way that research ethics work in universities, and particularly the challenges that those pose for people who are doing creative or what we call research creation, so creative work and community engaged work, where we don't want to set the questions in advance. We don't want to tell people, here's what I'm looking to find out. We want to go to the communities that we're working with and say, what do you want to do? What's important to you? What do you need? And that kind of ethics, that practice of applied theater ethics, doesn't fit well within research ethics. So recently, I have finished the revisions on this project, and it's forthcoming in this Bloomsbury series on applied theater. Another critical element of my engagement with the CSC has been that opportunity to engage with broader communities that I wouldn't otherwise feel comfortable inviting myself into. I'll put it that way. And most importantly, our local Mi'kmaq communities. The CSC has very strong relationships with Membertou and developing relationships with other Mi'kmaq communities. And Marcia brought me in on this project, Kunduwuktuk, which was a play based on stories from the community about their ancestors and about the ways that those ancestors had been forcibly removed from the Kings Road Reservation and up into what is now Membertou, which at the time was, sort of in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a swamp. And as any of you know who are here in Cape Breton, Membertou is a model for a growing and thriving community. So Marcia brought me through the CSC, through this project, into the project. In particular, in creating this play, we were creating these puppets, and Marcia had brought in already another scholar who kind of designed the puppets and helped work with the community to decide what the puppets would look like. And my contribution was to work with anyone who was interested in creating particularly the heads. And you can't really see it well from here. You might see that there's a little bit of an image on one of them. Those are images taken from archives, but the heads themselves are paper mache, and they are made of torn up copies of the transcripts of the trials that led to the forced removal. And for me, that was such an important moment to give these documents to people to say, let's tear this up. It doesn't need to rule us anymore, right? And it was such a great project to be a part of, to try to help wherever I could in organizing. I'm a trained stage manager, so I kind of took on that role as we moved into production. And I was just so pleased to be a part of it and to be a part of the community coming together and telling their stories for each other, to each other, and then to inspire from there more storytelling. And that's another thing that I've picked up from the CSC as a part of my process, that now I often will have projects that then let the audience or invite the audience to contribute further to the project so that there's a continued life beyond that initial moment. That's one of the big problems with university research, is it tends to happen. We write the article and then it's done. And this kind of research is much more ongoing. It has its own life. That can create some challenges around workloads, but it's also worthwhile because it's clearly meaningful to the people involved and really rewarding to see it continue. That project also led us then into Songs, Stories, and Sacred Fire. And this is a project that is in collaboration with Membertou and the Atlantic Memorial Park. And the folks at the Atlantic Memorial Park are building a memorial. They're renovating some abandoned buildings from the war. And it was important to them, in the spirit of reconciliation, to ensure that there was space for Mi'kmaq culture, and that how that space was designed and what was included, what was developed in it, was a representation of what the Mi'kmaq communities want on the island, and particularly Membertou as the partner. And so we did a number of projects here where we, again, did some capacity building. We brought in people to talk about how do you deal with archives and publishing, particularly when you're dealing with sacred knowledges. We did creative workshops that were designed to help people have an opportunity to talk about what was important to them while they were doing things that were culturally relevant. So drum making and ribbon skirts, you can see the ribbon skirts there on the right. And the other component of this that was really critical was that we hired Mi'kmaq students as RAs as much as possible, so that we could be contributing to the capacity building within the community. There was one other thing I wanted to say here, and I'm just trying to remember what it was. One of the most important moments of this project for me was when we had visitors from the Mohawk Traveling College
Yes.
come in.
I'll have it before I leave here today. You sent me the
And
transcript. Their name is
Helen, you're unmuted, just to let you know. Thank you. We had those folks come in, and what I learned from that was just the importance of being adaptable and flexible, because there were weather issues, and we ended up moving to Marcia's house, and we had a beautiful feast there. And I remember sitting in sort of the side room in Marcia's house, rapidly sewing tobacco pouches to give to all of the elders who had graced us with their presence that day. And it became this important cultural meeting that we could never have planned. We knew that it was important to hear from the traveling college and to understand the ways in which they had been doing similar cultural work that we wanted to see happen in the Memorial Park. But we couldn't have expected the people who would arrive that day and the magic that would happen in those moments. And again, that's something that the CSC does, is it doesn't go out to say, this is what we're going to do. It creates the space for things to happen. And it's so important. Moving forward, I part of being involved in the CSC was then also being part of a kind of network of researchers. And so I guess it was last year, maybe it was the year before. Time has lost meaning over the pandemic. My apologies. We had some nursing faculty from Dalhousie reach out to us and say, we have this play that we've created out of queer women's birth experiences in rural Nova Scotia, and we want to tour it, and we want to develop it. We want to do more with it. Do you have anyone we could work with? And so the CSC became an opportunity to connect, a place where we could bring people on board. And in fact, I became part of that project. We wrote a lovely, successful grant. Then the pandemic hit. So we are waiting to take that project up again when it's safe for everyone to gather, as a way of using theater to help foster conversations around queer health, and particularly queer health in those rural communities that are often underserved in terms of medical care. And most recently, as I'm sort of taking all of these lessons from the CSC on board, I'm applying it to a project that I'm doing with a student of mine, Shashwat Shavedi, and he's taking the lead on this project. And so this is, again, that mentorship model of going, okay, sometimes what's most important when we have these resources is for us to hand them over to people who don't usually have them and say, great, let's do what you want to do, because you've got great ideas too, and I can learn from that, and I really want to be a part of that. And so Shashwat is working on a street play for sociocultural awareness, adapting an Indian street play model into Cape Breton, hopefully for Lumiere this year. And again, a focus on diversity, on trying to make sure that we have as many different voices as possible coming together to talk about what's important about being here in Cape Breton. What are people struggling with? What are some of the challenges? How do we maybe start to address those? And using this particular model. And if you're interested, please do get in touch, because we still have room for more participants. So my time at the CSC has been incredible. It's just a wealth of lessons. And to try and sum it up, even though it's going to be impossible, we have space and equipment that at the very core is a resource, right? It's a resource for research. It's a resource for students. We have students in there all the time doing dance, doing theater. We have community members coming in and running their own projects, including sometimes those kinds of engagement projects where we might have, say, a live broadcast of something that people otherwise wouldn't be able to come together to watch. We create that space for them. So at the very core, just having that space, I can see how important it is as a generative and creative inspiration for everyone who gets to use it. Part of that has also been me learning a lot about how you develop policies that care for the equipment and the resources and the space, but are also open and accessible to other people. and learning to deal with how these things like the CSC fit within a larger institutional structure and the negotiations that have to take place there. And that's been important for me preparing to become a chair, because that's some of the work I'll be doing. It's also been critical to expand my work into including digital media, because digital media becomes a resource for research, for recording what's happening so that we have a way to come back to it more easily, as well as for disseminating that material. I've used some of the videos to create either screenshots or short clips to show in conference presentations, for example. And just the mentoring and training students. This is something that's always been important to me, but we see so many students come through the CSC and through different projects, and we see the challenges they face. We learn how to communicate better. We learn how to establish the frameworks and the parameters for them so that they get the most out of that opportunity. And again, to see some of them come back again and again, and to see that the ways that the projects that we do in the CSC are enriching them, that's part of what's been so valuable. Interdisciplinary and multimodal projects, that's a lot of what the CSC focuses on. I mean, we can do one focus things, but we tend to expand, and we tend to look at the ways in which these different ways of engagement, different artistic forms, even different academic disciplines can inform each other. And again, create that kind of generative environment. Before the pandemic, I was running something called the Serendipity Cafe, where it was just an opportunity for my colleagues to come and sit and work. And some of the conversations we had there were, again, conversations we would not otherwise have had if we hadn't had that space. And the importance generally of collaboration. Being able to collaborate with Kate Krug in the Neighbors Project, as an example, really helped me, and some of Marcia's work as well, in developing ethnographical skills. So learning how to do field notes, learning how to talk about what we're observing. And I'll remind you, I mean, I started out as a medievalist. So the people that I was studying, they were long dead, dead white people, pretty much. And so I worked with documents. I didn't work with people. And I've learned so much about how to work with people in safe and ethical ways, or brave and ethical ways, and how to record that in order to make sure that their time is well served with respect to research outputs. Community engaged processes and emergent processes, not knowing what you're going to do in advance, making sure that the community is centered in the work. That's something that the CSC has really helped me to feel confident doing, and it's now an ingrained part of my practice. And finally, those connections and networks. I've mentioned the Mi'kmaq connection. Marcia's done a lot of work with the African Nova Scotia community, and that's given me, on the edges, a little bit of access to those communities as well, and to start to know even who to talk to if I want to try and involve more people. For me, the queer communities have been really important. I didn't mention, but I've taught several workshops for the Gender Sexuality Alliance conference that happens annually in the CSC. So that's young queer folks coming in, having an opportunity to play in the space, having an opportunity to play with theater, and learn a little bit about how you can use theater to create social change. And in general, youth. It's actually one of the things I struggle with. I'm not a very social person. I can fool you for a while, but I get very shy and very nervous. And so having these opportunities to over and over and over again work with youth has helped me overcome some of that, and remember that we just need to be ourselves to be authentic, be present. And then finally, out of that, learning what's important about language. I mentioned how proud I am to be able to say Wolastoqiyik, and Clifford teaching me that if you speed through it, it sounds like you don't know what you're doing. Take your time. And so I've learned to take my time and to find the right language, whichever the circumstance is. What the attitudes are you need to bring to working with community, and in general, an ethos of care. And I promise you that Marcia and I did not collaborate on the fact that we were going to emphasize care. It's just what is part of the CSC, and it's evident in the blueberry bush. It's evident in the tea we serve. whenever anyone comes for a meeting. It's part of what we do. So it has been an absolute honor to work at the CSC, to serve you guys as an associate director. And I'm incredibly excited to see the work that Shauna MacDonald is going to be bringing in. Shauna MacDonald is a graduate from our BACS program at CBU, but she has gone on to be a professor in the United States in performance studies. And we are so pleased that she is coming back to us. She was formally officially back to us last year, but of course with the pandemic is still stuck in the States. So she was teaching online, but we hope to see her in person very soon. And I will stop sharing now. And yeah, we're really excited. So I'm going to pass this over to Shauna, and Shauna's going to tell you a little bit about herself and her work. And there we go.
Thank you, Sheila. If I may, Shauna, really briefly. Thank you, Sheila. It's really good. I'm so grateful that you've given us the opportunity to revisit all of that work. And wow, to be reminded just of how much you have accomplished, and really in a short few years. So thank you for that, for today, but for all of the work.
It's been 5 years, right?
Yeah. But that's really not very long to do all of this work, right? So I'm going to introduce Shauna now to tell us a little bit about her work and plans for the future. And then we have two very special musical ways of honoring both Sheila and Shauna after Shauna shares with us her contribution to today's program. So thank you, Sheila. And taking on the position of Associate Director for the next 3-year term is Dr. Shauna MacDonald. I'm delighted to welcome this CBU alumnus, of whom Dr. Rod Nichols has said, quote, "It's hard to imagine a person better suited for the position at this point in the center's short history. Her work is both traditional scholarship and performance-based research and creation, embodying the distinctive spirit of discovery which motivated the CSC's founding. Dr. MacDonald brings fresh eyes and an enviable wealth of academic experience acquired in American universities, while her undergraduate career as a CBU student gives her a first-hand understanding of the Cape Breton communities which the center serves," end quote. I agree with Dr. Nichols. I'm certain that with Shauna's energy, warmth, and extensive knowledge of creative research that we're engaged in, as well as her special relationships with local communities, we stand to explore new possibilities in this next chapter. Our work at the CSC is collective, collaborative, and interdisciplinary, and I'm thrilled that Shauna is equally committed as we work with other researchers and communities, committed to service both within the faculty and beyond. The potential for achievement really blossoms under such openness and dynamism, as Sheila has given us many examples. And it's very exciting to envision what's ahead with Shauna. Welcome, Shauna. Please say a few words.
Thank you, Walal and Merci. So I don't have pictures, but I do have some things to say and to share. And before I do that, I want to make sure you can all hear me. I have my AirPods in, but my air conditioning unit is very loud. Good, okay. We'll get started. So I wanted to begin by acknowledging that while the center and many of you are in Unama'ki, as Marcia and Sheila have mentioned, I am not. Myself, I am located on the indigenous territory known as Lenape-Hawking, or the traditional homelands of the Lenape people, sometimes called the Lenni Lenape or the Delaware Indians. And little fact, these are the people who during the 1680s negotiated with William Penn to facilitate the founding of the colony of Pennsylvania. So thanks to the University of Pennsylvania for providing that little tidbit. But to be more specific, I am a white Canadian-American settler living and speaking to you from what is now known as the suburbs of Philadelphia. And I hope to be in Unama'ki sooner than later. And I just wanted to share that because I believe it is important to acknowledge the colonial legacies, not just in the places where our events are happening, but where all of us are located as well, and to really pay attention, especially, but not only in these times, to that. And so thank you for listening to that. If you are here and you happen to be in another part of the world, I don't know that we have anyone, but if you happen to be in another part of the world and you want to share in the chat where you are and which territories you are on, then I would love to hear it or see it. So from Philadelphia, we will first travel back to Nova Scotia, but not to Unama'ki or Cape Breton, actually to the other end of Nova Scotia. And I'll begin with a short poem, original poem. Nourishment. She calls it dinner, the midday meal, just like my mom and her mom and her mom. A few short years in Boston had failed to erase that particular linguistic oddity, that cultural marker that says, here, the big meal is early. Here, the work is hard and the day's cold and the morning's bright, or veiled in fog. Here, we eat dinner at noon and supper with tea before the sun sets. Here, the fog rolls in thick like a weighted blanket for a wary piece of land. Here, we do our best with our daylight hours. Here, we have picnics and dinner and tea to soothe the aches of our labors at age 5 or 55. Here, we keep our eyes on the sea and our feet on the stair. Here, we all know how to tend. Light, or child, or lamb, or peas. Here, we call it dinner. So that is a short poem from a solo performance that I am working on that I also hope could be a part of Lumiere, and if not, a part of other festivals and events in Nova Scotia. The performance will be called Light, and it's based on the memoir of Evelyn M. Richardson, who is an amazing woman who lived on Bon Portage Island from 1929 to 1964, and she and her husband actually owned the island and kept the lighthouse there. Her memoir is gorgeous and pretty famous in the lighthouse world, so to speak, but this poetry and this performance will be based on her life. Performance is a part of my research creation. It's a very big part, and so I thought I might as well share a little with you as a preview and as a way to get to know me. The rest of my time, though, I want to talk a little bit about who I am as a person and as a researcher, and a little bit about my forward thinking, my plans for the center. Now, I will preface all of that by saying that of course, I haven't had a chance to do much with the center yet, so a lot of this is plans and dreams, but I will start with some things I've already done. So I'm not going to tell you my CV because that's boring, and because not the best way to get to know anyone, but I did want to talk a little bit about what I do and who I am. So I consider myself a storyteller as a researcher, and that's pretty much what research is after all, storytelling with data. And of course, there's all kinds of data out there, or kinds of data. I tend to focus on words and actions as my data. My training is in, as I think was mentioned, communication studies and performance studies, and I still very much root myself in those traditions, but as Sheila was mentioning of the center and her work, I consider much of what I do interdisciplinary. It's pretty hard to do some of the work that I do without being interdisciplinary, in fact. So I did write this one statement down because I wanted to not leave anything out about my research. I use creative, qualitative, and performative methods to study how meaning making happens at the intersection of humans, more than human entities, and technology. I also am really interested in how communication happens in particular kinds of places. So this is where the place-based element of my research comes in. I'm often very interested in memory places, places where we hold historical memory, or we use these places to tell stories about the past. So that is a lot of what I'm interested in a broader sense. What does that mean practically in terms of what I study? Well, lately and currently, it means that I study the meaning of lighthouses. Yes, those beacons all over Nova Scotia's shores, but I am interested in the concept of a lighthouse, the actual places. I'm interested in specific lighthouses. You name it, I'm interested in it. What I'm trying to do, though, is to study the meaning of lighthouses as tourist sites, as extraordinary communicators, and as post-human memory places. And if anyone's interested in any of that, we can talk about it, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, as we move forward. I've also always been really interested in issues of intersectionality, gender, sexuality, race, class, social justice issues more generally, and teach my classes from that perspective. And so every time I start a research project, even if I think, well, this one doesn't have anything to do with gender, it has everything to do with gender usually. And so I end up coming back again over and over to questions of women's lives, of gender and sexuality, and so on. So I would imagine that in all of these projects that will come through. And of course, the project I'm working on that I read the poem from is, of course, based in a woman's life. So you see it already. As you've probably figured out, I work in several media, but primarily I do live performance, although who knows, maybe I have to learn more about technological performance in our new world, and creative academic writing primarily. I'm also working right now on a book. Saying that is a bit generous. I've only just started, but I'm working on a book about lighthouses and what they mean for us as humans navigating the 21st century. And so there'll be lots of interdisciplinary work in there as well. So all of this is just to say that the kind of work I do, the things I've been interested in for my whole life, make me really excited to be a part and honored to be a part of the Center for Sound Communities, because the kind of work I do really needs a home like the Center for Sound Communities, and I think it's going to be a really wonderful opportunity, not only for me, but to be able to bring some of these methodologies that I have learned into the space and into the communities as well. So I'm really thrilled about that. To have a space where interdisciplinarity and collaboration are part of the mission, I think we might forget sometimes how rare that is in academia, and so to me, it's just a really wonderful thing. I'll say just a little bit more about some of my experience, I guess, in case folks are interested. So obviously I've been doing all this research, but I also have been teaching at the higher ed level since about 2005, 2006, and mostly in the US. And, you know, I approach my classroom much the way that I approach my own research and community work, and that is dialogue, engaging with one another, physical embodied work, vulnerability, all of those things that come into a critical or creative pedagogy. And so I'm really excited to see what kinds of connections I can make with community to extend some of that work. Since I've been away for so long, I need to reach back out to some of my communities and see what I can contribute. I will say, throughout my academic career, I've continually come home theoretically if I haven't been able to come home physically. So when I was a master's student, I produced a show that was based on ethnographic research about coal mining in Cape Breton. And then not long after that, I started working on lighthouses and have produced short performances and a one-woman show that feature a lot based in Nova Scotia. So I've never been very far from home in my thoughts and in my heart. One more thing to share about my experience, and I'll talk a little bit about what I hope to do or what I'm already starting to do with CSC. This is a bit of an odd one, but much of my service in academia, and Sheila can probably attest to similar things as well, much of my service to my colleagues, to students, to the community has revolved around organizing and producing and putting on events. I had no idea when I got a PhD that being in academia would be good training to become an event planner, but it kind of did, in my case, help me to learn how to become an event planner in the sense that I have done everything from make the centerpieces for an event to emceeing the event to all the stuff that happens in between. And Of course, it gets busy, the workload is a lot, and sometimes I grumble, but not so secretly, I kind of love it. I love bringing people together. I love creating spaces for people to interact with one another. And so that experience, which most recently was as the co-director of the Gender and Women's Studies program at Villanova University, my former institution, I think that experience will help me a lot in terms of the centers, not just the events that we put on, but also project management and thinking about how we move the research work that we do forward in different kinds of ways. So I'm really excited to try to bring that experience with me, you know, and we'll see what we can do with that. Let's see. I veered from my notes. Where am I now? Here we go. It brings me right to talking about now and the future of the CSC. So I first just, I guess, want to say that I see my role very much, especially now, as a supportive one. I'm still, despite having graduated from CBU in 2005, I am still pretty new to the institution in its current form. I've been at CBU now remotely for a year, and so there are still some things that I'm trying to learn as we begin this process, but I'm truly humbled and grateful for the trust that Marcia and Sheila and Graham and Chantel and everyone else has put in me. Marcia's expertise, the team that she's clearly built, Sheila, your support since basically my first week or even before my first week as an employee of CBU, all of that support has made this possible and makes it so that I can learn the ropes, but also be a support right out of the gate. So I'm really excited about that. One of the things that we are already working on, Marcia and I, is a communication plan and thinking about the way that the center distributes information, you know, uses social media. How can we harness some of those, some of the power of some of that differently, or what do we want to do with it? So I'm working on what I'm calling a friendly communication audit to see what we are doing, what we have done, and what we might do over the next 5 years. So I'm really excited to bring my communication expertise to that. And I'll also be working, among many other things, of course, with the space itself. So thinking about, you know, bookings and the use of the space, I'll be a part of that. Marcia and I have also already started talking about research projects that we can either begin or continue to work on together. And so I'm excited about that and just to see where it all takes me. I really hope that my expertise and, if nothing else, my passion for the work helps us to just add to and increase the energy that the Center for Sound Communities already has and the impact that it's having, that the center is having on Cape Breton, but also internationally. And I hope that we can continue that and just continue to grow. And I want to thank both Marcia and Sheila, of course, but also my chair, Don White, and my dean, Andy Parnaby, for not only being supportive of this, but enthusiastically supporting my taking on of this role and helping to provide whatever I might need to make that happen. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. Beyond that, I think you all have heard enough from me for now, but I will put my email in the chat if anyone wants to reach out to me individually. And again, congratulations, Sheila, and thank you for all the work that you did. And I'm happy to get to work.
Thank you, Shauna. Thank you. It's really nice to hear more about your work in more detail. We've been getting to know each other a little bit, but you know, we never have enough time, right? And we haven't yet met in person. So this is really special to hear about all of this, including all of what you've done in terms of your values of hospitality and care too. These are Thank you for sharing some of your research creation through performance with us today. That was a real treat. Features a musical performance by the extraordinary Lassana Diabaté, international balafon virtuoso based in Mali, West Africa. And he has been in member to And he has met with Graham and Youth and Member 2 and worked with them as well. Many times he's been in Cape Breton and throughout parts of Nova Scotia, working with communities there and at the Center for Sound Communities. It's been an honor to work with Lassana since 2014 when he came to Cape Breton on more than one occasion as a research collaborator with the Center for Sound Communities, contributing to ongoing projects involving African Nova Scotian communities, anti-racist, global music education, and celebrating musicians of African ancestry. Lassana's album, Bala, was produced at the CSC in collaboration with the Center for Cape Breton Studies and made its debut earlier this year in a virtual concert via YouTube. And you can check that out on the CSC's YouTube page. If you go to our homepage, you can click through to the links. Lassana has collaborated with musicians around the world and across many genres and has been a key contributor in several Grammy-nominated albums. In 2016, he widened his sphere of influence to establish the association Foli Lakana to foster the vitality and sustainability of local musics, youth, and communities in Mali. This endeavor now stands to build resilience through a new operating model to be developed out of the CSC's partnership project. That's happening now. And Eric is the project manager for that as well. Lassana has spoken of the importance of helping young people become self-reliant, maintaining traditional musical values, and above all, staying open to other cultures with the aim of achieving cultural symbiosis through music, end quote. Lassana's generous spirit shines through in his musical gifts. It's now my great pleasure to introduce Lassana Diabaté. And I think Eric is going to press play. That was extraordinary, Lassana. Thank you so much. And I love the comment that Sheila shared about this creative process and the action of this music that, you know, sometimes it's about moseying along as we do our work and creating relationships and bumping along joyfully, playfully, creatively, and then sometimes fantastic bursts of energy and production and performance. And that was really wonderful. Thank you, Lassana. Yeah, I'm thinking today about how we all, so many of us here, including some of our board members like Chantal, who's a published children's storyteller. We all tell stories in different ways. Sheila through theater, and Shauna through poetry, Graham through his song, Lassana through his music, and so many other people who are here today contribute to the Center for Sound Communities. I want to thank right now Doreen Yaborski, who you see. She works in communications and design. She helps us tell the stories online through all the imagery, the text. She even prepared my notes after this extemporaneous me talking in a meeting to make sure that I stay focused. And Eric helps us prepare a lot of our literature. And of course, he hosts wonderful events. He's involved in managing the project with Lassana that's going on now with African Nova Scotian youth in Whitney Pier. And Chantal has been a really big part of helping us make those relationships and connections too. Excuse me. So thank you, Lassana, again. Thank you, everyone. I'll briefly go through a list of events and then I'll say goodbye for the day. As promised, our summer celebration includes some special announcements that we're so happy to share with you. The past academic year has been filled with activities and achievements despite the pandemic, and this is a brief overview of some of our highlights. We're thrilled to announce that thanks to the efforts of Dr. Sheila Christie especially, the Center for Sound Communities has now been established as the home for the Canadian Society for Traditional Music. The CSTM is dedicated to the study and promotion of musical traditions of all communities and cultures, meshing perfectly with our mission and mindset. I'm currently the president of the CSTM. It's Canada's ethnomusicology society that is founded on relationships between music makers and folklorists, folk aficionados, and scholars. And we are the local chapter of the International Council for Traditional Music. Another milestone for the CSC is our recent inclusion in the Cultures of Sound Network, the CSN. It's an alliance of 5 institutions. Logan's here as a representative of the Smithsonian Folkways Recordings, and she is a member of CSN as well. The Smithsonian Folkways Recordings is one of the partner institutions. Each of the 5 institutions brings with it different resources and folks with different kinds of expertise, different community connections. Together, the CSN has an international reputation building now for research and public education focused on music and sound. So other partners are the University of Alberta's Sound Studies Initiatives, Memorial Sound Studies Initiative, Memorial University's Research Center for the Study of Music, Media and Place, or MMAP, the Canadian Museum of History, and Smithsonian Institution through Smithsonian Folkways Recordings. Preservation and dissemination of knowledge about musical and cultural heritage are at the heart of the CSN's mandate, which calls for sharing resources, furthering creative research, and enabling wide public access to a rich body of work. We're delighted at the prospect of working together to develop exciting new projects around music and sound. Following the release earlier this year of Lassana's CD Bala, we're working with Smithsonian Folkways and community organizations across North America, including Whitney Pier Youth Club in Sydney, to develop and deliver music education celebrating African music traditions. We're also leading a program of virtual events and activities in partnership with ICTM and CSTM toward the decolonization of dance, music, and sound under the Dialogues Project. Our workshop of creative interventions took place last month, led by Indigenous scholar Dylan Robinson at Queen's University. And we've already announced developing anti-racist pedagogies in ethnomusicology that will be presented this fall in 3 workshops, or 4. Another exciting prospect on the horizon is the CBO Artist Residency Program. At this stage, it's under discussion and in development. but it has the potential to open up opportunities for research into a wide range of arts practices. Just a reminder that CSC is host in an ongoing way to artist residencies with researchers like Lassana Diabaté as an example. We've significantly increased our presence, the CSC has, in social media, with regular posts supporting researchers across the spectrum of disciplines, and we encourage people to visit our Facebook page to read about the CSC and other research centers around the world involved in community-engaged arts-based research. And if there's something you'd like us to highlight or something you think we should highlight, please let us know and we'll make sure that we do that. The CSC website has also been redesigned and expanded, and its content keeps pace with our many project as they fold. Here, a special thanks to Doreen for leading the charge with that. I'm especially pleased that Dr. Shauna MacDonald here is keen to contribute her skills in communication and collaboration as we consider how to foster community that thinks critically and works together to meet the challenges of our contemporary world. The CSC is offering 2 free Summer Institute courses that I would like to mention. In July, Cantering in Ukrainian Byzantine Liturgies, which connects to the work we've been doing with Ukrainian parishes in Cape Breton, the Ukrainian parish in Cape Breton. This workshop is led by Dr. Melanie Turgeon, who is the Associate Professor of Music and a Choral Director at King's University in Edmonton. And in August, an introduction to digital cinema production with award-winning filmmaker and associate professor of music at MacEwan University, also in Edmonton. Dr. Michael MacDonald, who's leading that course, is also originally from Cape Breton. So it's really amazing to be involved with Shauna and Michael, who've come back to their community. They're coming back time and again to contribute, reconnect with the communities here. Yeah, that's not the mic that's in communities and languages at CBU. It's an entirely different Michael MacDonald. So registration for both of these free CSC Summer Institute courses can be accessed through the website, or which is at soundcommunities.org. Finally, I'll bring this summer celebration to a close by inviting you to yet another celebration this fall. In October, the CSC will mark its 5-year anniversary, a milestone in terms of the scope of our endeavors, both locally and abroad. Extending our reach to the global community brings us all closer in spirit while serving and supporting those around us in our academic research efforts. And I'm just gonna read again from the text. Graham shared me the translation of that song. Perhaps the most relevant line. Let us greatly respect our native roots. My people, let us gather. My people, let us help one another. Let us help one another as the Creator intended when He put us on this earth. I invite you all to follow our posts, share them, visit our website for upcoming opportunities to engage with the CSC as part of our growing research consortium as well. Looking forward to seeing you in person this fall, perhaps some of you, and soon after, many more of you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks to everyone who's made this day possible for your special contributions. Have a good summer, and we look forward to seeing you in September.